We finally approached the crescent-shaped island, its towering cliffs rising from the turquoise waters like the walls of a fortress. The whitewashed buildings of Fira, perched precariously atop the caldera's edge, gleamed in the afternoon sun, a stark contrast to the black volcanic sands that lined the shores. Upon arriving, we were greeted by a treasure trove of Minoan artifacts and frescoes, each one more stunning than the last. The vibrant colors and intricate designs of the Minoan lady and the fisherman frescoes took my breath away. Their beauty and sophistication a testament to the skill and artistry of the ancient civilization. But it was the excavation of the House of the Thrania that truly captured our attention. The collection of 3,600-year-old ritual artifacts, including a clay chest containing a marble figurine of a goddess, sent a shiver down my spine. Regina, her eyes wide with wonder, turned to Bastian and me.
What's amazing about the Minoan archaeological discoveries is the lack of fortifications and the infrequency of weapons. Their art and records focus on agriculture, trade, and beauty, a clear sign of a society where women were at least equal to men.
I nodded, my mind whirling with the implications. The statues in the temple areas are exclusively female, I mused. Bastian, his eyes scanning the exhibits with rapt attention, chimed in.
I'd like to point out that if an alien visits the Virgin Mary sanctuaries of Fatima or Lourdes, they may assume the Catholic Church was dedicated to women's empowerment.
I conceded, sure, but the lack of depictions of weapons and combat points to a peaceful society. It's a stark contrast to the militaristic focus of other ancient civilizations.
And yet, there are hints that the Minoans controlled trade in the eastern Mediterranean, but perhaps they used diplomacy and commerce rather than brute force.
As we wandered through the museum and archaeological site, each new discovery fueling our excitement and curiosity, I knew we were on the cusp of something extraordinary. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, revealing a picture of a lost civilization that challenged everything we thought we knew about the ancient world. But even as I reveled in the thrill of discovery, a nagging sense of unease tugged at the back of my mind. With trembling fingers, I pulled out my phone and finally mustered the courage to check my messages. My heart sank as I scrolled through the notifications, each one hitting me like a punch to the gut. Friends and family expressed their concern, sending me links to a barrage of articles that had surfaced about me. Tabloids had twisted fragments of my past, painting me as a call girl based on nothing more than a pole dancing class I had taken years ago. I felt violated, exposed, and utterly betrayed by the media's relentless desire for sensationalism. But it wasn't just the tabloids. Mainstream news outlets had jumped on the bandwagon, giving a platform to so-called academics who eagerly supported Bastian's claims that the Voynich Manuscript was a hoax. They questioned the carbon dating, casting doubt on the very foundations of our investigation. I was watching my credibility crumble before my eyes, helpless to stop the onslaught of misinformation. And then there was the City Rag, the publication I had once trusted with my livelihood. They had released a series of articles discrediting Dr. Hathaway, interviewing colleagues who claimed she had a history of peddling pseudoscience in her lectures. It was a blatant attempt to undermine her reputation, and by extension, the legitimacy of our entire investigation. I felt sick to my stomach, betrayed by the institution I had devoted my career to. Bastian, sensing my distress, began to surf the net, his eyes widening with each passing moment.
Rosie, you won't believe this. In the last 24 hours, YouTube has been flooded with videos discrediting Sir Arthur Evans and other archaeologists who worked on uncovering the Minoan artifacts. They're accusing them of projecting their Eurocentric perspective, of being myth-makers instead of myth-finders, all for the sake of fame and fortune.
He let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head.
The number of videos from stuffy male Oxford experts is ridiculous. One of them is even analyzing the frescoes of Minoan men jumping bulls, claiming it's clear proof of aggression and a male-centric society. It's absurd.
But even as Bastian tried to inject some levity into the situation, I could feel the weight of the disinformation campaign crushing me. The sheer scale of the effort to discredit our work, to bury the truth before it could even see the light of day, was staggering. I felt like I was fighting a losing battle against an enemy with endless resources and no scruples.
Hey, you okay?
Bastian asked, placing my hand in between his. And in that very moment, I wanted to trust him, to bury my face in his chest and sob. I wanted to let him spoil me with kisses and little nothings that meant the world to me. But regardless of his intentions, he had started the disinformation campaign. He was as terrified of this world of powerful goddesses and matriarchal societies as the rest of them.
Rosie, you're trembling. Come here.
He said, pulling me closer. I couldn't find the right words, so I just stepped away and stood there, lost in my thoughts. I noticed Regina speaking to a woman who had approached her. They seemed to know each other, and Bastian's eyes widened in recognition.
Is that Bettany Hughes?
Who is Bettany Hughes?
Seriously, Rosie. She's only the most important Bronze Age historian and broadcaster. A real goddess.
He blinked his eyes adoringly. Regina, noticing our curiosity, intervened.
We maintain the discretion when it comes to the identities of our members.
Bastian gasped.
Bettany is in the order?
But the other woman, undeterred, spoke directly to me. Her voice was warm and calming with a British accent that lent her words an air of authority.
Amalia, I saw the news.
She said, her eyes filled with understanding and empathy.
You can call me Bremusa. I want you to know you're not alone in this fight. We've seen it all before, the pushback, the attempts to silence and discredit. But you can't let them win.
She paused, her gaze distant as if lost in thought.
The Minoans. We don't know the way it was, and we may never will. But we can try to grope our way towards the truth. For too long, the tales spun from every archaeological find, every relic of the past, have been filtered through the lens of men. Their perspective, their prejudices, their heavy-handed interpretations have shaped the myths that colour our understanding of history and limit our vision of what could be. It's time for us to behold these treasures with fresh eyes, to trust our instincts and bring our own wisdom to bear.
Her words struck a chord deep within me, resonating with the very reason I had become a journalist in the first place. To uncover the truth, to give voice to the voiceless, to challenge the dominant narratives that had held sway for far too long.
Evans was far from perfect. Consider Harriet Boyd, a pioneering American archaeologist who was present with Evans when they uncovered the throne at Knossos. In her journal, she wrote that Evans initially believed the throne might have belonged to a priestess, based on its shape and size.
Bremusa paused for a moment, gathering her thoughts.
However, at that crucial moment, Evans was influenced by the myths of Theseus, tales created many centuries after the fall of this great civilization. Myths carefully designed to promote Athens and crush foreign women and their mysterious rituals. In these tales, Theseus dominates the Amazons, the king of Eleusis, and the Marathon bull. Propaganda to promote modern Athens' supremacy over ancient Crete.
She took a deep breath before continuing.
Evans changed his tune and boldly proclaimed to the world that he had found the throne of King Minos. With that single decision, the Keftiu became known as the Minoans, and the disinformation campaigns designed by Athens effectively reframed an entire culture.
And all I could think about were the parallels between history's disinformation campaigns against women and my own current drama. I shook off my self-pity party and stood tall. Bastian shot Bremusa a skeptical look.
But bulls are everywhere in Minoan art. Isn't that proof of the existence of King Minos?
Regina sighed dismissively.
Healthy initiation ceremonies. Unarmed boys leaping bulls into manhood,
She said, then leaned forward, her gaze scintillating with admiration.
Harriet was one of us, a true ally. Her accounts give us a glimpse of what might have been, if only the world had been ready to listen.
Bremusa nodded, her expression grave.
Yet the strength of the scrutiny pushed towards Evans, and not so many other archaeologists, tells us more about the power these Minoan artifacts have to disrupt the status quo and unlock future possibilities than about Evans himself. Because when a child reads a history book, she's not contemplating the past, she's dreaming the future.
As I grappled with the weight of the woman's words, Bastian's voice cut through my thoughts like a knife.
Holy guacamole, Rosie, you've got to see this.
his eyes wide with a mixture of excitement and horror.
I found a new article about a place called Anemospilia, the Cave of the Winds, where the Minoans supposedly performed human sacrifices of young boys.
He turned to Bremusa.
Is this true?
The woman's smile was as enigmatic as Mona Lisa's.
It depends who you ask, but the eruption around 1600 BCE and the events that preceded it changed things. It was the beginning of the collapse of this great civilization. Scared and starved, they were now at the mercy of the Mycenaean Greeks. The age of the mother goddess was ending. Poseidon the Earthshaker had arrived with a bang. Minoan refugees scattered across the seas using the few vessels they had left. Their archaeological vestiges found in Philistine settlements as far as Gaza, pottery fragments and goddess figures, similar to the one in the House of Thrania.
I took a deep breath, pushing aside the creeping sense of doubt and frustration. Turning to Bremusa, I voiced the thoughts that had been nagging at the back of my mind. This is all fascinating, but according to Dr. Hathaway's interpretation of the Voynich, we are looking for evidence of a far more advanced society. A lost matriarchal civilization who had mastered technology, biology, and perhaps even quantum physics to travel to different realms. But are we on the right track? Or are we, as my critics suggest, veering dangerously close to the realm of pseudoscience?
Technology.
Bremusa smiled, a glint in her eyes.
I'll take you to some friends who have a track record of innovation. They can help you separate fiction from fact. They've been waiting for you.
As we followed Bremusa out of the museum, I felt a flicker of hope amidst the crushing weight of doubt and frustration. Perhaps with the help of these mysterious allies, we could rewrite history, not as it had been told, but as it truly was. The focus on technology made me recall the Minoan fresco's watch at the library. I asked Bremusa about it, and she laughed wholeheartedly.
It's a Minoan seal. There are many types. Rings, carved knobs, others worn around the neck or wrist on a string.
I see. I felt a rush of heat rise to my cheeks as I realized I had jumped to wild speculation.
The seal impressions tell us that an object belongs to the owner of the seal. Some symbols are combined for more complex recordings.
Bremusa narrowed her eyes with a renewed intensity, and then she whispered,
There's an archaeological site called Monastiraki, where they found 3 archives with hundreds of Minoan seals and vestiges of parchment and ink on the backs of seal-impressed clay nodules.
Hey, Bettany?
Bastian cleared his voice.
I was wondering if you were up for a live stream with an up-and-coming YouTube channel about, history and such.
The elbow Regina projected into his ribs made him gasp for air. Bremusa turned to me and winked.
Don't worry, you'll find your watchers in no time.
I cringed, still ashamed of my unfounded conclusion. It was so tempting to dream up history from small fragments of ancient plaster. And so, with a deep breath and a determined stride, I stepped out into the bright Santorini sun, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The truth was waiting, and I would not rest until I had claimed it as my own.